What is up, y'all? Welcome back to my podcast, the Atlanta Audible. As usual, I'm your host, Ice Ray, and today is episode 5, where I'm doing a season recap of the Atlanta Falcons. As usual, it was a crazy season for the Atlanta Falcons. It's a season full of ups and downs. Truly a roller coaster of a ride. I think the Falcoholics said it best when they said that being a Falcons fan is like riding a roller coaster that has a track record of not being very safe. I saw another person who had a very apt description of it. It's like you wait months to ask out your crush, and when you finally do, right before they say yes, they throw up on you. And I think both are very, very accurate and very, very great descriptions of what it means to be an Atlanta Falcons fan. The season started off with very high expectations. And I think the funniest part of this message is that Ray McCloud didn't even finish the season with the team. He ended up with the New York Giants. But the Falcons finished 8-9 for the second straight season, and head coach Raheem Morris was fired. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons season truly started off in epic fashion. Bijan Robinson scored the first Atlanta touchdown 3 plays into the season on an electrifying 50-yard catch and run. Not to mention, the Falcons defense dominated Baker Mayfield, holding him to 0 yards at the end of the first quarter. I mean, the entire Bucs offense only had 2 total yards through 15 minutes of play. Surely that means the Falcons dominated the game then, right? Incorrect. Late in the fourth quarter, the Falcons were trailing 17-13 until quarterback Michael Penix Jr. turned on the heroics. Penix space jammed into the end zone on 4th and goal to make it a 20-17 game with less than 2 minutes to go. And then surely Caden Ellis capitalized on the sack on 2nd and 9 to make it a 3rd and long for the Falcons defense, holding on to a 3-point lead. Oh wait.
2nd down and 9. Mayfield escapes pressure. He's hit as he throws.
Baker hit Egbuka for the game-leading touchdown 2 plays later. But luckily for Atlanta, Michael Penix Jr. is the clutchest quarterback alive. He led the Falcons into field goal range, down his wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, with Drake London and Darnell Mooney both out during this series.
Keep the Falcons alive as Penix steps up, takes off, and then slides, picks up a first down. Penix on first down, fires, it is caught, and taken up the sideline by Ray McCloud. From midfield on first down. Penix complete. Another first down, Kyle Pitts. From the 34, Penix dumps it off. Bijan Robinson. Here's Penix.
There it is.
On first down.
Oh, nice play. Nice defensive play.
All Koo would have to do is hit a 44-yard field goal, and the Falcons would be heading to overtime in their first game of the season. Man, these Bucs-Falcons matchups have really turned into cinema as of late.
From 44, it is wide to the right, no good!
So special teams sold the game for the Atlanta Falcons in Week 1, a trend that you'll notice held true for most of the season. Atlanta had arguably the worst special team in the league last year. Kicker Younghoe Koo was cut ahead of the Falcons' Week 2 matchup with the Minnesota Vikings, but he would go on to make national headlines with the Giants. In Week 2, the defense shined. This is the game where I realized that defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich had truly transformed the defense, especially the pass rush. Falcons defense ended the night with 6 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. The best part was that every member of Atlanta Falcons' young defensive core recorded a counting stat in Week 2. Falcons' 15th overall pick, Jalen Walker, had a sack, the first of his career. The Falcons' 26th overall pick, James Pierce Jr., had a sack, the first of his career. The Falcons' 2024 4th-round pick, Brandon Dorlus, had a sack, the first of his career. The Falcons 2025 fourth-round pick defensive back Billy Bowman Jr. had an interception, the first of his career. And he nearly came down with the second one, just minutes after the half. And the Falcons 2025 third-round pick safety Xavier Watts had an interception, the first of his career. Offensively, Falcons struggled, settling for 5 field goals and highlighting a season-long issue that would be Zach Robinson's play calling. However, running back Bijan Robinson had himself another game. He ended the night with over 150 yards of total offense, 168 to be exact. I mean, he opened up the night on a 25-yard run, showing the type of night that would be in store for the Minnesota Vikings defense. One of the coolest plays on offense actually happened on accident. On a 2nd and 15 in the third quarter, Bijan Robinson took a direct snap and made some moves to end up with an 11-yard gain. However, Penix told the media after the game that the snap was not a designed play. It happened on accident. But any way that the Falcons offense can get the ball in Bijan Robinson's hand is a good thing. And I forgot to mention that Parker Romo took over for the cut Younghoe Koo in week 2 against the Vikings. He went 5 for 5 on field goals, including a clutch 54-yarder in the fourth quarter with Atlanta holding on to just a 10-point lead. But I thought you said that the Falcons special teams was bad last season. How could this be the case? Oh guys, just you wait. In week 3, the Falcons headed to Carolina with legitimate expectations. That's when we should have known that it would all go wrong. And go wrong it did. The Falcons would end up losing the game by 30 points, and they would not score a single point all game. Kicker Parker Romo would go on to miss not 1, but 2 field goals. Guys, I told you, the 2025 Atlanta Falcons special teams was truly a disaster. The worst part of the game is that the Falcons dominated statistically. They had 2 more first downs than Carolina, held them to just 3 of 11 on third down, outgained them by over 100 yards, and held Bryce Young to 121 passing yards and 0 passing touchdowns. The difference in the game was the turnovers, with Atlanta turning over the ball 3 times to Carolina's 1. It's just insane that the Falcons would dominate this game statistically, but lose by 30 points. And the worst part is that this would not be the only time it would happen this season. Week 4 was the best the Falcons offense has looked all season. They scored a season high 34 points, and everyone got involved in the score. You get a touchdown, Drake London. You get a touchdown, Bijan Robinson. You get a touchdown, Kyle Pitts. And last, but certainly not least, you get a touchdown, Tyler Algier. He got into the end zone on a very angry run. Penix was slinging the rock all game, throwing for 313 yards and tying his career high. Not to mention, Zach Robinson finally dialed up some deep shots, and Penix hit on a number of them. Penix's strength in college was throwing the deep ball, so it was nice to finally see that going. He finished the game completing 76.9% of his passes for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. It would be his last interception of the season. Defensively, the Falcons finished the game with 6 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, 2 fumbles forced, and an interception. It would be Xavier Watts' second straight game with an interception. Falcons would beat the Commanders for the first time since 2018, despite playing them every year since 2021. At the time, it was a thrilling victory over a team that was just in the NFC Championship a season ago. And it looked like the Falcons offense had finally woken up. The Falcons headed into their Week 5 bye, the earliest a team could have a bye, at 500, sitting with a 2-2 record. During the break, Atlanta Falcons running back Bijan Robinson was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Month, and Falcons safety Xavier Watts was named the NFC Defensive Rookie of the Month. At the time, Robinson's 584 yards from scrimmage led the entire league. He started off the season with 4 straight games with over 100 total yards from scrimmage, with his lowest yardage total coming in Week 3 against the Carolina Panthers when he had only 111 yards from scrimmage. At the time, Xavier Watts was one of only 13 defenders with 2 interceptions. The only players with more interceptions than him were Devin Lloyd and Kevin Byard. Watts' 2 interceptions led all rookies in that span. In Week 6, the Super Bowl contending Buffalo Bills would be coming to town. This would be the game to show if the Falcons were a legit team or not. Atlanta scored first on an electrifying 21-yard touchdown run by Tyler Algier, just 3 minutes into the game. However, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills would answer back, scoring this Dawson Knox touchdown on 3rd and 13. Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London would answer back to make it a 14-7 game with time winding down in the first quarter on this amazing touchdown play. Look at the effort by Drake London to extend for the score. It looked like it would be a back and forth battle. However, the Falcons defense forced a stop and got the ball back in the hands of the offense. At that time, it was time for some Bijan Robinson magic. Bijan took a simple outside run to the right and took it 83 yards to the house for a touchdown. At the time, it was the longest touchdown run of the season. Both teams would go on to trade punts, and finally, the Bills found themselves with the ball with roughly a minute to go in half, looking to score points. That was when the Falcons defense forced another stop, with cornerback D. Alford intercepting a Josh Allen ball with seconds to go in the half. It set up the Falcons offense in Bills territory right before halftime. That was when Drake London and Michael Penix Jr. nearly made some more magic happen, with London just a yard short of scoring a touchdown to make it 28-7 lead heading into halftime. In the second half, the Atlanta Falcons would go on to score just 3 points. However, they held Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, and the Bills offense to just 7 second half points. A D'Angelo Malone interception on a tip ball would ice the game. Atlanta improved to 3-2 and looked like one of the best teams to beat in the NFL. In Week 7, the Falcons headed to San Francisco to face the Fred Warner-less 49ers. Bijan Robinson seemed primed to have a great game, especially coming off a 238-yard explosion against the Buffalo Bills a week ago. However, it all went nearly immediately. Linebacker Divine Diablo was injured on the Falcons' first defensive series of the game and would not return. J.D. Bertrand took his place, and that is when Christian McCaffrey really started to get going. With Diablo out, the middle of the field was free eats. McCaffrey ended the game with 129 rushing yards, his second most in a game this season, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Bijan Robinson ended the game with just 40 rushing yards on 14 attempts, averaging only 2.8 yards per carry. However, the stud running back still managed to find a way to get into the end zone. The biggest lapse of the game came defensively on a 3rd and 13 late in the fourth quarter. Falcons defense had just 10 players on the field, and they somehow forgot to account for Christian McCaffrey as a stud running back converted the crucial first down and essentially iced the game. However, I am not going to blame the defense for this loss. The Falcons offense scored just 10 points, and right tackle Elijah Wilkinson essentially gifted the 49ers 3 free points as he let Bryce Huff untouched right before the half, allowing him to force a strip fumble sack of quarterback Michael Penix Jr. However, the loss of linebacker Divine Diablo would ultimately prove crucial for this Falcons defense moving forward. In Week 8, the Miami Dolphins would be coming to town. They were fresh off a Quinshon Judkins hat trick and were currently sitting at a 1-6 record. It seemed like the perfect time for a Bijan Robinson bounce-back game as the Falcons would run all over Miami Dolphins defense and return back to form. Unfortunately, the opposite happened. Robinson had just 25 rushing yards on 2.8 yards per carry. It was the worst game of the season for the defense as they let up 34 points and allowed Tua Tagovailoa to throw for 4 passing touchdowns, the first and only time he would achieve this feat this season. The biggest culprit for the defensive breakdown was J.D. Bertrand, who was filling in for the injured Diablo. Malik Washington caught Miami's second touchdown of the game with Bertrand in coverage. PFF credits Bertrand with giving up 8 completions on 9 targets for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tua had a 144.2 pass rating when throwing in JD Bertrand's direction. So the Falcons got blown out by the 1-6 Dolphins, and they would not score their only touchdown a game until there was only 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. This was the game that made me give up on the rest of the season.